Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Marcus from BlackMarriedDebtFree, and I'm here with my lovely wife,
Shira Murray.
And we are super excited. I'm cheesing, as I do quite often. I'm excited. I'm smiling because we have a special guest. We have Dr. Anita Johnson on the podcast this week. And we had the opportunity to go to a lecture that she had a few weeks back. And we just got so much out of it. So Dr. Anita Johnson is a financial behaviorist, and she's the founder of Money, Wisdom, and Women, and the co-author of Being Broke is Maddening. And we had an opportunity to read her book, and we just got so much out of it. So we wanted to bring her on so she can give us some nuggets and some wisdom and hang out with us. So Dr. Anita Johnson, or Anita, thank you for being on with us. So we just have a couple questions. We're just going to dive in. First, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, those who haven't heard of you yet?
Okay, so tell me exactly what you want me from the very beginning when my mother had me, or when I...
However far back you want to go.
Well, I'm actually a native of Louisiana, and I migrated here in '79 and raised two children here. I finished my degrees at both my degrees, or my undergrad and graduate, at National University, and then my graduate degree at Walden University. And so I've been owning my own business. Well, I was working for the state and doing that little side gig and making lots of money at the state. Then I had decided a long time ago that I wanted to be an entrepreneur because most of my family was entrepreneurs. My mother and dad, they had their own side gigs when they were teachers. And then my aunts and uncles on my mom's side had speakeasy places here in California. Yeah, and then my mother owned a nightclub too in Louisiana. So they always wanted to be, the entrepreneurship was always like in my blood. So as I was working through the state, then my son got to be 13 and he needed a lot of support and help. And so I said, okay, it's time for me to stop. And so I went into Anita Johnson & Associates, which we did a lot of bookkeeping and taxes at the time. And then later on, changed the name to Money Wisdom for Women because women were coming through to my organization and was trying to figure out what to do with their money. They was making lots and lots of money, but they just were broke all the time. And I was trying to figure out why that was so. Then I started getting my PhD. I was starting to go to law school to be a tax lawyer. And then I decided I would probably be better off getting a degree in finance and researching women and money. So that's what I did. So that's how I became a financial behaviorist. Although my niche is women, I have couples that actually come. I have another couple that just came in. And usually it's the wife that makes a decision and the men just kind of follow along with it.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's a great story, to hear the beginnings and like how you said, that entrepreneurial spirit was in you at a young age. So I think that's amazing. So with your meeting with women in regards to their finances, can you tell us in your experience, what seems to be the common barrier, in people obtaining financial freedom?
Yeah. So what I find common, especially when it comes to women and mostly, women in general, let me just go with women in general, play nice and just kind of take what people give them and be happy. And that's what I found a lot with women in general. And then when you go culturally, I find with African-American women, they really have a whole different kind of concept of what beauty is or what is supposed to be their place. And then you have Asian and Hispanic women who have that's a whole different, especially Hispanic women, and then Asian women that have a whole different light on money, how they feel about money and things.
Just to, you just sparked something right there. In your lecture, you spoke about the disparity when it comes to the net worth. Mm-hmm. Can you break that down? Because we got some people that were really wanted to
interesting. So the disparity with women and net worth. So a Black woman's net worth is worth $5. It used to be $1, so it come up to $5. right? And then a white woman's is 40,800, something to that effect. And so a lot of people get confused with what net worth is. They think their paycheck is net worth, right? And they don't realize that net worth is their asset. So we're talking about lots of assets. We're not talking about your home or your car, because your car is not an asset. We're talking more on investments, how to invest and invest properly. And I'm not necessarily talking about investing in the stock market, but investing in, for instance, I had Ashley got Airbnb in my home, right? Or some other things. So that would make my house, my investment in that more valuable, right? And then you have investments in, I think I talked about life insurance, right? Okay, we talked about life insurance. And so life insurance is a good way to pass wealth over to your children. But we as African Americans don't do that a lot, because we're saying, oh, I'm not leaving them nothing, because if they made it, I got to make it.
Right.
And so you have that. And then you have, and the other thing I talk about is education. And it's not necessarily going to college, because I'm not sure if college is a good thing anymore, right? Because we come out with a lot of student debt, a lot of student loan debt. But if we had houses that would value in it, like white people do, we could take the money out of the house and pay for the education. Or if we left our children certain life insurance policy while they were still young, we could give them some a life insurance policy for them to go to college. So those are things that are part of the net worth. Mm-hmm.
Nice. So we picked up a copy of your book, So Being Broke is Maddening, the book that you co-authored, and we both went through it. There are sections where there were some questions that were presented, and so Marcus and I, we went through the questions and answered them. We really had a lot of interesting conversations based off of, the information provided in the book. So can you share a little bit about like what sparked the idea for this book, Being Broke is Maddening?
Okay. So my thing is, I believe that long spurts of brokenness brings on depression, and it brings on not only depression, but it brings on mental health issues. Yes. So my theory is, and like I said, I actually deal with Black women more, and I research more in Black women than I do with any other, and I compare them. So my dissertation was about the difference between Black women and white women, and how they view money, and what was the cause of them, how they view it, and what's the cause, and the mindset that people have around money. And I have a theory that's that's coming out in my next book, which is Unapologetically Broke. We talk about how that post-traumatic slave syndrome plays a big part of how we think. And so that's how I think about us and money. I think there's a theory about Black women. So we had slavery, we had Jim Crow, we had all of those, and those things helped us had a thing for our mindsets towards money. Redlining, all of those things have a mindset on how we feel about money, and somebody else's definition of how we should be beautiful. Has lots, women spend lots and lots of money on different things that they could be investing in, but I never tell anybody anything about how to spend it. I just be saying, okay, this is how to think about it. So I think we don't have enough money, enough time, or enough money, and that gives us that mindset, and then we become depressed and we become maddening. And I work with this book with a therapist, and she says she sees that in a lot of her clients, where it's not just other issues. It's not that my dog is dead. It's like, okay, I'm broke and I'm always broke. And so those are the kinds of things that keep going.
When we were reading that, even the title alone, it's just like, man, you never think about it like that, but again, like you said, it plays on your mental health when you're consistently, not where you want to be financially. So that's
definitely. Yeah. And the thing is that we don't know how to get out of it. A lot of people come to me and the first thing they want to do is like, oh yeah, I've been following this budget, or I've been following this spreadsheet, I've been doing this. There's something wrong. can you help me with my spreadsheet? And I say, well, okay, so how's that spreadsheet been working for you before? So you think that's the only thing that you need to do? You need to actually change your mindset or improve your mindset when it comes to money.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? This is Marcus, and I wanted to pause really quickly to tell you a little bit about Audible. Audible is a leading seller and producer of spoken audio entertainment, and it's great for having your books on the go. I love Audible because it's right on your phone, and you can play your favorite audiobooks wherever you are. Audible is giving our listeners an exclusive 30-day free trial just by clicking the link in our description. And guess what? They're going to throw in 2 free audiobooks. You don't want to miss that, y'all. Check it out. Now back to the show.
So one of the questions that were in the workbook, it asked about how we were raised. And so can you speak to the significance of your upbringing and how that may impact some of your spending habits as you get older? Okay.
So so a lot of the questions that I ask people is were there fights in the family about, and was there one person that controlled the money? Did you come from a 1-person household or a 2-person household? Those type of things. That's actually what the retreat is about too. It's about your financial DNA that I have coming up in August. It's about that. So I always use myself as an example. I was raised, so both my parents were educators. So they taught school during the day, and then my dad was an architect, and my mother played the piano. So my dad built almost every church in Louisiana, and my mother played at every one of them. Wow. Right? So, and my mother got a car every 4 years, right? Every 4 years, my dad and her designed their own home. And so, and I lived in a small town called Oakdale, and it was like 500 people population. So school teachers were like the kings and queens on the hill, right? And so we had a big house we lived in and things like that. And all my friends were school teachers' kids. So they had big houses too, if you can compare them in Oakdale, Louisiana, right? And so, and everybody knew who my parents were. So if I go uptown to white folks' places or something like that, so I could just get what I wanted, and my dad would pay for it. And so I thought that was the way it was supposed to be. And so I did that in my marriage. And that was just a reckoning when, my husband would be like, no, I'm not paying for that. Then I would say, well, my dad would pay for it. And then my dad would pay for it. And then I don't know what happened, but I think my husband had a talk with my dad. And so I think he stopped paying for it. And so I asked my dad, I was like, you didn't send me my money, right? One day, and he's like, your money? Where did it get to be your money?
Right.
Right. So there's an example of how that is. And a lot of women that I deal with, they say that their dad did a lot of that too. And when the day of reckoning came, I was still working, I was still making money, I was still doing everything, but I still was like, okay, I thought I was entitled to have that from him. It broke my heart when he stopped, but I think it made me a better person. And if there's, and I work with couples, and I've had one woman, she's so into the spreadsheet, and the guy's like, I don't want no spreadsheet, I don't want to deal with that. But I come to find out, his dad never paid the bills on time. His mother left his dad for not, and she was raised with the spreadsheets, and so those are the things that really does that.
Yeah. So speaking of spreadsheets, one of the things that you describe in your book is a financial spending plan. So can you kind of share maybe the differences between a financial spending plan and a budget?
Oh God. So think about how you write a budget, right? What I tell people, think about how you do a budget. So most people, they pull numbers out of their hat and start putting numbers right on a spreadsheet or a budget or things like that. And I think I've already described the budget as a money on a diet. And most people don't want to be on a budget because they don't want to be on a diet or any of that kind of stuff, right? They want to be able to eat what they want when they feel like it, which ain't true, but that's what happens. And so when you do a budget, you kind of pull money out of the hat and put these numbers there. And then you be like, oh, I went over my budget, so I'm not going to do this anymore, right? So a financial spending plan is a little different. It's a lot different than a budget. So it actually, what I have people do is when people start coming to me, they track. That's one of the things they start tracking what they spend. And they track everything they spend. That means from their travel vacation to their investments, to their retirement, to college education, to what they spend on gas, what they spend in the machines. Any of they start tracking. And they do that for 3 months, and then they can categorize that so they have a better understanding of what they really spent. So they do that, and then they categorize it, and then you can put a buffer in there for 5 or 10% more on the number. So now you have a more accurate number of what you're spending, right, as opposed to something with a budget that you just pulled a number out of the hat on.
Yes.
So that's the difference. And that's why I call it a financial spending plan, because it has everything. It has a kitchen sink in there. Anything that you're going to spend, your emergency fund, any of that.
Yeah, I thought that was great when we heard you at the lecture, when you spoke to that. That was kind of eye-opening, because I never thought about it like that. So I think it's great. Anita, can you give some advice for escaping the cycle of being broke? Like, I know that's kind of a broad topic, but if you could, give a couple tips.
I would say follow you guys. No, I'm just kidding.
We appreciate it.
Yeah. I mean, you guys are amazing to me, to be so young and to realize that most people have to be my age before they realize that, oh, I've really messed up, right? I would actually, some of the things I would probably say would to be know where your money mindset comes from. Realize that you have a money script. There's money scripts too. I read this book. I can't remember the name of the person who I got this from, but there's like different money scripts. One money script is, oh, I'm too frugal. Right. So I'm never buying anything. So that means that you don't escape your own mindset. Right. It's like people that have been through the depression, they don't spend anything. Mm-hmm. Right. They, so you spend, and then there's somebody that spends too much. And there's somebody who is really in the middle of it. And then there's one more, but I can't think of it right now. But, you have to know who you are, and so what your mindset is, and just kind of watch it. It's not about I can go to the store and I spend too much. It's like, why do you spend it? Why are you in that position?
Right.
Why are you spending it like that? What is it that makes you do that? And I think when you do that, then you find yourself in that money madness.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you spoke something at the lecture when you said it's about the root. You got to dig up the root.
Yeah. What the root of the problem is.
Right.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. So, Anita, can you explain the importance of an action board?
So I do these things called financial action boards. I wrote this book. I was in collaboration with somebody else, and I wrote this book months ago with this person, and part of that was called a financial action board. And part of the action board it's like a vision board, but it's more of action. Like, okay, so what actions are you going to take to get to this particular money thing that you're trying to do, right? What actions are you really going to take and do?
Right.
And so part of that is, I want a certain number. I want a certain amount of money. What am I going to do when I get that money? What kind of actions am I going to take to get it? What am I going to do with it? Because money always should have a purpose. You should not be spending money just because you want to be spending money. You want to have an action for your money.
Anita, we appreciate your time. We appreciate you sitting down with us. Can you tell everyone how they can, get in contact with you if they want to, or maybe your social media, just how they can get in touch with you?
Okay, so they can always email me at moneywisdomforwomen@gmail.com. My website is AnitaRJohnson.com, and my Facebook page is Anita Johnson, FP for Financial Psychologist. And then, of course, under Eventbrite with all my events and things. So, yeah, you can find me there.
Got you.
Nice. So I think now is probably a good time to put a plug in that when we attended a lecture to see Anita, we recorded some of it and we have it up on YouTube.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen it, we encourage, our listeners to check it out. And one thing that happened, someone was, had invited Marcus and I to be a part of they did a Instagram live, and in part of the conversation, they wanted to talk about you, and they wanted to talk about and so I'm really excited that you were able to join us today. And I know that there are people looking forward to us having this conversation. So again, thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Love you both.
Bye.
Bye.